demanded for us by the founding fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
It's Monday. Welcome to the program. I hope everybody is doing well. I hope the weekend was good to you guys. Thank you so much for being with us. My name is Paul. You found the intersection of conservative ideas and reality where we are building a liberty machine. So glad that we have you with us. Now, let's just kind of go over what we're going to talk about today on the program. We're going to talk a little bit more about vaping because we have some Arkansas politicians that seem to want to really, really ride this wave of public inquiry to get more money from the people. It's pretty interesting that we're going to have people running for re-election promising to pass tax increases on vaping. That's pretty interesting to me. I feel real sorry for Max Brantley. I'll tell you why. Max Brantley, progressive, Arkansas Times, I feel real sorry for Max Brantley. It's just because, the whole Trump delusion syndrome is real. It's a real thing, and people really wanting to impeach the president, it's just ridiculous. But we'll talk a little bit about that. Then we got coming up on the program at the bottom of the hour. We've got Dan Perkins. We've talked to him many times on the program, but we're going to specifically dive into this whistleblower complaint. Now we find out that this whistleblower, this guy in the intelligence community, it was originally reported that he heard or he read the transcripts of the president talking with the Ukrainian president, and now we find out he didn't read any transcripts at all. He also didn't listen to any phone calls. He just found out that this allegedly occurred. And it's pretty much confirmed. They've been honest about what the phone, but he found out through other means and then filed the whistleblower complaint. It just ended up being a big dud, honestly. It was just a way to get this into the news, and then we're going to talk about why this might be in the news and why it was timed the way it was. Also, let's see, after we talk to him, we are then later in the program going to be talking with State Representative Jack Ladyman. He has announced that he will be running for re-election, so we're going to have him back on the program. It's always great to talk to Jack. Later in the week, by the way, tomorrow on the program, we're going to once again talk to Brigadier General Robert S. Spalding, who has written the book Stealth War, How China Took Over While America's Elite Slept. And, the saber rattling going on with Iran right now is a little troubling, so we're going to have General Spalding on to talk more about that, and I'm sure China as well. Then Arkansas's, tomorrow on the program, Arkansas's Family Council, Luke McCoy with that organization will be on the program. Always great to talk to him. We got that and much, much more throughout the rest of the week. But let's kind of get into this, shall we? This from Talk Business and Politics. So, of course, last week, and when we left you on Friday, we reminded you that there are these great articles up at conduitnews.com, Conduit for Action, detailing this latest push by Senator Jim Hendren to raise taxes on e-cigarettes 67%. And Roby Brock with Talk Business and Politics, who is, he's... he's definitely center-left. I'm sorry, left of center is what I'm trying to say. He, sits down with Senator Jim Hendren, the president pro temp, the governor's nephew, and they start talking about a special session. And then it leads to this article, this headline. Senator Hendren says could be months before consensus formed on vaping. Now, I think the real story here, beyond that headline, is if you read in here, according to Talk Business and Politics, they say that right now, Senator Jim Hendren's plan to tax vaping at 67% doesn't have the support that it would need to pass muster, to pass the committees, to pass the House, to pass the Senate, in a special session. So that's to me, that's interesting. Senator Hendren saying that he did talk to Governor Asa Hutchinson about a special session. Quote, he says, if you're going to get the support, you're going to know within a few months. This may take a little bit longer because there's a lot of new evidence coming out, and we do want to make sure that we gather all the data, that we make wise decisions about how we implement this. I'm not a big fan of special sessions, but there are times to have them. Really? How many we've had so many special sessions. I mean, you wouldn't know that if you're not a big fan. We certainly wouldn't know that by the number that's been called. And by the way, the governor's the one that calls them. I mean, that's a fair point, but still, I mean, we all know it's the exact process. The governor calls special session and only designs what he knows he can get accomplished. You know how embarrassing it would be to call a special session and this is what you want to do, and then the legislature rejects it? It would be embarrassing. I'd like for it to actually happen at some point. Instead of these predetermined outcomes. What's the point of calling a special session if you've just whipped the votes beforehand, right? I mean, then it's just a formality. I mean, we might as well just have an emperor that just makes the laws. And then they really hamstring everybody where you can't legislate like this is the bill, this is what we're voting on. Anyway, he goes on. I'm not a big fan of special sessions, but there are times to have them. And when every school official is saying this is an epidemic that is exploding in our schools, every day we wait, we're getting more and more kids addicted to this product. Legislation isn't going to change it overnight, but it's going to begin to make the changes and begin to curb this growing epidemic that we have in our schools. So I'm hoping because of that urgency that we have to stop a future generation from becoming addicted to nicotine through this new delivery method. We'll get the support and we can take care of it sooner rather. And now I thought, so it's to try to stop kids from getting addicted to nicotine. I thought there was all this stuff about the respiratory problems. But then again, I thought that was the black market THC ones. So this is actually about nicotine. We don't want kids to be addicted to nicotine, which, I mean, I just feel like we're fighting an uphill battle here, folks. I don't know. I'm sorry to be pessimistic. It's not that I want children or teenagers, certainly not children, but it's not that I want teenagers to get addicted to nicotine. But, I mean, how long have people been using nicotine? I mean, this is, if you really think about it, it's laughable. It is. It's laughable that the government is once again on this crusade. Like, how about just pass a resolution that says parents, parent your kids better, I'd rather that than, and then people are going to, yeah, well, it's tough, your teenager goes off and, yeah, they want to smoke cigarettes or they want to vape. I mean, this is just what happens, right? How is it the government's responsibility to step in here? I just don't get it. Now, I mean, I know the Trump administration is, they don't want the flavors and everything else. I get that, right? I mean, that we did this a long time ago with tobacco companies when they had the candy cigarettes, They weren't actual cigarettes, but they looked like cigarettes, and it was it's kind of sadistic way to market, like, hey, we'll eventually get them on cigarettes if they're, sucking on them like candy. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of messed up, actually. But this idea, see, to me, this is just less about public safety and more about tax revenue. I mean, that's what they're saying here, that it's just not safe. Nicotine addictions are not safe, and we care about the public safety, but in reality, you just want to tax a product 67%. I mean, this would not be nearly as appealing if nobody was doing it. The fact that everybody's doing it, and I know everybody's not doing it, but the fact that so many people are doing it is the reason the government wants to come in. Senator Hendren wants to come in and tax it. I mean, you think a couple bucks really going? I mean, you think increasing the tax 67%? I don't know what that comes out to as a dollar figure. You think that's going to stop teenagers from getting this stuff? Oh, and by the way, I thought we raised the smoking age to 21. Oh, but these kids, wait a second. They were smoking when the smoking age was 18, and now they're smoking when they're still smoking. They're still getting a hold of the product? How? How in the world are they still getting a hold of the product? I thought you guys wrote a bunch of words on a piece of paper and went it through the committee in the House, and I thought it was signed by the governor, and you're telling me that people are still using it? The schools could fix this easily without the government getting involved. All the schools have to do is say, hey, man, if we catch you vaping at a high school game, or we catch you vaping anywhere on the premises, you're expelled. You're done. Your school year's over. Bye. You don't get to come back. You're done. If you make the penalty so much, you know. Now, last week I did say there'll be some kids that will want to get expelled, but that's on them too, right? That's on them too. Telephone number 870-275-9799. That's 870-275-9799. Let's see. So, once again, the title of this act is the School Safety Act. The School Safety Act. Now, why is Senator Hendren doing all this? Why did he try to do it in the earlier this year? He got the Democrat. If you'll remember, Senator Hendren, Republican, the governor's nephew, President pro temp. He got a bunch of his Democrat friends together to announce the tax increase on the vaping. It didn't pass, but it was coupled with an earned income, tax credit. This liberal welfare program that the Democrats have been wanting to get for a long time, but they can't get it. I mean, previous sessions they try, it fails, it gets nowhere. So that's why the Democrats were willing to unite with Senator Hendren. And there was a photo. I mean, the Democrats put the photo up on their website. We did a segment on it, and then they took the photo down. Fascinating development. I think it's because the Democrats realized that people were going to use that they really wanted to get their income tax credit, and then they thought, oh, now we may not get it. And they didn't. They didn't get it. Thankfully, Joe Jett's Revenue and Tax Committee in the House, they weren't for this. They wasn't going to get anywhere in that committee. I think probably because they were tired of raising taxes. Here and there, cutting them here and there, raising them here and there. We've talked about this. So that's kind of where it went. Now, so why was he doing that? Well, there were some people speculating the reason that Senator Hendren decided to do this is because he was trying to form a coalition that could later serve him if he wanted to run for governor, meaning getting some of his, maybe getting some of these Democrat senators to be like, oh, well, we can work with Jim. I know it's a Republican, but we can work with him because he's pragmatic, as they say. And a lot of people thought he was actually doing this to try to build a coalition that could support him and run for governor. It actually had the opposite effect with some lobbyists that I was talking to during the time. They thought that it was so strange, and they ended up being like, I don't think he's cut out for being governor. So at the end of this interview here, fascinating thing that's said. You could even speculate that's why. You could speculate that's why this is happening now. It's statewide news. It's in the state newspaper. Then it's on Talk Business and Politics, which goes out on, television across the state. Joe, can you pull this article up real quick? I've got it queued up here at the very bottom of the page. If you could just click the YouTube video. I want you to listen to this. This is Senator Hendren. Roby Brock asks him if he is interested in running for governor. Now, keep in mind, in the context of this, nationwide questioning about vaping and kind of a hysteria, we've piggybacked on it. Now Senator Hendren's in the news. He's proposing to tax the people more, the vaping industry more, which is going to get passed on to you. 67%, bringing more money in, but it's going to go to school safety, is what he says. So Roby Brock asks him, hey, got to ask you while I have you here, are you going to run for governor? Listen to this.
I'm interested in dealing with the problems that are on my plate today, which are, right now, as you can see, this is one that I have a lot of concern about. I'm never going to close the door to political decisions, but I'm also not going to make those years in advance. And I mean, we've got another fiscal session, we've got another general session, and then we've got another fiscal session prior to a next governor's coming into office. So it's 3 years away. I am considering it, but I'm not going to make a decision that far in advance. I got too much work to do today.
You're also up for re-election in 2020. You'd have to make the decision to run or not run if you wanted to run in 2022 for governor.
Well, it's a 2-year term in 2020, so I am on the ballot this time around, and potentially, so I'm up for election this year. So that's, again, to start worrying about the 2022 decision is pretty premature.
2020, it's 2019.
That's what we do.
I
Come on
understand.
now.
I understand.
It's 2019. I think he means this election cycle year, whatever. Now that is fascinating. That is absolutely fascinating news to me, because, see, I didn't know that Jim Hendren had already drawn a 2-year term. Did you know, Joe? I hadn't heard. For those of you that don't know, occasionally, every 10 years, when we do the census, because it works out weird, there are senators that have to draw, supposedly they draw straws or whatever, or they draw, and you know, some get a 2-year term instead of the normal 4-year term. Well, obviously, most of them want a 4-year term because you don't want to have to run for re-election again. You know, you want to run for election as much as possible. So this is fascinating development because it's news. Because you notice that's Senator Hendren there correcting Roby, because Roby is saying that if he's going to run for governor in 2022, he needs to decide now, because he couldn't, if he was going to run in 2022 on a 4-year term, or I'm sorry, if he was going to run in 2020 and get a 4-year term, then he would be ineligible to run for governor in 2022, because you cannot resign to run for a higher office. It's a part of Arkansas law, because it could create this ripple. It does create a ripple effect of special elections. You know what I mean? If you can just be in office in the middle of your term, you can resign, but you can't resign to run for something else. Does that make sense? That's the way Arkansas law works. And so what we have here is a situation. By the way, I mean, if you just Google this, it's pretty simple. If you just Google Arkansas Senate 2-year terms, the very top of Google says that 2-year terms are drawn by a senator after reapportionment, and they don't count against the senator's service under the Term Limits Amendment, which limits Arkansas state senators to 2 terms of 4 years. A senator who draws a 2-year term can serve 10 or even 12 years. And this is let's see here. Anyway, this is just Arkansas Senate Wikipedia. The point is, I thought there was supposed to be a drawing, and I thought it was supposed to take place, but maybe there's something I've missed here. I don't know. What are the rules there, you know? Has it just been decided that Senator Hendren is going to get the 2-year term so that he can run for governor if he wants to? And again, I'll also mention that I think a lot of this whole vaping thing is a way to get a state senator that nobody really even knows who he is across the state. Unless you're in the political realm, nobody knows. And there's never been a state senator go from being a state senator to governor. It's never happened. Our governors normally are already in a statewide constitutional office. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. What do you think? Let me know. Sound off. Facebook.com/Conduit News. We're going to take a break. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back in just a moment. Welcome back to the show. Thanks for starting the beginning of your weekend with us here at Conduit News. Now, I don't know if many of you know this, but today is the day that a bunch of people are supposed to go rush Area 51. So who knows what's going to happen, folks? Who knows what's going to happen? I know one guy who thinks this is the most important story of the day, and his name is Congressman Bruce Westerman. He joins us now. Bruce, how are you? Of course, I'm joking. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well, Paul. Good to be with you this morning.
Yes, sir. Good to be
Yeah,
with you.
I had forgotten about the Area 51 day, so that was quite a stir back. So today's that.
Yeah. Hey, Bruce, hang on one second. I think we're losing you. We need to get a better phone connection because I want the interview to be good. So let's get Bruce back on the. Yeah, Bruce, if you call us right back, sir, that would be perfect. We're gonna get a better connection. The telephone number. Well, he knows the telephone number. So real quick, yeah, just get a better connection.
In Arkansas, every single hour there is a politician not getting what they want. For some, it's an absolute nightmare. The sleepless nights wondering if progress will ever come. Lying awake pondering how to grow government in this political climate. Asking questions like, why don't my constituents want to pay a few cents more in taxes? Everyday politicians feel abused and neglected. These politicians are starving for power. They're hungry, confused, and they don't understand why no one seems to care. Will you be a patriot and commit today to help these poor, starved for power public officials? It's simple. All you have to do is commit to stay silent and never dissent or stand in the way of your politicians' rise to power. Never speak up or get engaged to stop the growth of government. By committing to these simple steps, you will ensure the life of your politician will be filled with contentment and the respect they are desperately seeking, as well as campaign contributions from lobbyists.
This message brought to you by Aristocrats Serving Arkansas.
PHP Parody.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is building a liberty machine. Find out more at conduitnews.com.
Welcome back to the program. We really appreciate you being with us. Let's see here. We got some folks. People saying good morning. What do we have here? Anything else? People saying all present, all accounted for. Yep, we appreciate it. See, Dennis writes, yes, they do. Tobacco tax. I'm wondering, I don't know the context of there because I don't remember specifically what I said. But anyway, we appreciate all of you guys on the Facebook page right now. Please share it. If you don't mind, if you haven't shared it yet, that's what you need to do. You need to go and click the share button on this Facebook video and share it to your friends or share it to your personal page, and that's going to help get even more people listening to the truth. I mean, that's what we're trying to do, is bring you the truth every single day. You know, at some point, folks, at some point, the I guess I like to think of, you know, our tax dollars as something that is precious, you know, in terms of it's our money. The government itself does not exist, okay? If we don't will it to exist, and yet then we create something that it seems that it never gets enough of what we're already giving it, you know? And then if you want to say I'm not against more, or I don't want the government to have any more money, they got enough money, there are people out there that, especially on the left, they'll say, well, you're just being greedy, wanting to keep your money. Like, that's considered greedy, but it's never considered greedy when the government's trying to the government is never greedy, right? According to them, the government itself is never greedy in taking more and more of our money. And I just find that to be I just don't understand how you can't see it both ways. increasing taxes on vaping, I just don't think is the answer. More money to the government's not the answer. Because I know what happens when you start the interview and then it just keeps getting worse and worse technically. So Area 51, that is a thing that's funny. But what else is going on today is there are nationwide climate protests where students are allowed to skip school. I think in New York, Mayor Bill de Blasio is allowing the kids, like they're actually getting out of school if they go to the climate protest. We got Bruce Westerman back with us. Bruce, sorry about that.
Oh, no problem. I hope we've got a better connection now.
We do. It sounds really, really good. So the Area 51 is happening today, but I was just telling everybody what else is happening is you have these climate change protests where kids are skipping school, but in the case of New York, they're being told that they're being allowed to leave school if they go to the climate protests because, we just have all these, these folks that are telling these kids that the world's going to end in 12 years,
Yeah, what do they want to do about it other than protest? We all want the environment to be clean. We want clean water. We want clean air. We want safe food supply. But, go look around the world. We've got the cleanest and the best in the world right here in America because of the type of government and the type of economy that we've got. So their solution is to destroy the founding principles of our government and destroy our economy to somehow fix the environment. There's no logic or reason to what they're doing, and I don't think they have a clue what they're doing.
I agree, and I also think that if you really get down to what they are claiming is that if we do X, Y, or Z, which seems to always be kind of their solutions seem to always be rooted in socialism, we'll be able to control the weather. That's the way I see it. I simplify things. Socialism means we will be able to control the weather. And, I had this, we had this meme of the day yesterday, Congressman, where you had straws that were the size of rounds that go in what do they call it? An extended magazine. And it was a really funny meme where the straws were in the high capacity magazine. And that's now like a double felony if you're in California, right?
Straws and they had to be plastic straws.
That's right, not the paper ones. Those would be okay.
Yeah. So we, if you get a straw at a restaurant here in D.C., it'll be a paper straw.
Really?
Which I'm okay. I like paper straws, but I don't. Not because of I don't like plastic.
Yeah, exactly. So do they hold up? I've actually never had one here.
Bringing you your daily dose of truth. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, folks, welcome back to the program. We're going to get back to some Arkansas news here in a minute, but do want to welcome back first. We have Dan Perkins is back with us. We always love to talk to Dan. He's an Islamic historian, a terrorism analyst, a contributor at thehill.com. Also, his books, The Brotherhood of the Red Nile Trilogy. Check those out at Amazon. Dan, how are you, sir?
Good morning, sir. I'm fine, thank you. And yourself?
I'm doing well this morning. Now, we're a morning show, and so things on Friday, it's after we got off the air on Friday, that's when everything kind of blew up with this whistleblower story. That we mentioned it, I think, maybe briefly on Friday now that I'm thinking about it. But then it just kind of, the story started to change. The initial bombshell that was put out there that the Democrats were so happy, it seemed once we kind of read into the details, it wasn't what they initially reported. No shocker there. What are your thoughts on this, the evolution of this whistleblower story with the Ukraine?
Well, I think it's a fascinating story in the sense that what we have is the admission by an unnamed person, at least at the moment, who said that they were spying on the President of the United States. And the Democrats don't seem to think that there's a problem with that. I think there's a serious problem with that unbeknownst to the President of the United States, that people who are under his responsibility, that meaning that they report to him either directly or indirectly, took it upon themselves to listen in to a conversation with the President of the United States, and then decided they were going to release a comment that they didn't say who the person was or what the conversation was about. But it should scare the bejesus out of all of us that if the intelligence agencies are listening to the president's phone calls, what are they doing with ours?
Well, so it's interesting. So one of the reports that I had read or have read say that this guy, this whistleblower, actually didn't listen or read anything, that he found this out via other means or it was not related to work, the content of this call. So have you heard that same thing as well, which I thought was interesting, where the press runs with a story that the whistleblower did this, but the whistleblower really only heard this from a third party.
Well, I have to tell you that I have not heard that he didn't hear it.
Okay.
And what concerns me about that statement is that the Inspector General, who said there seems to be credibility based on what he heard from the whistleblower, I would think that third-party conversations shouldn't necessarily rise to the level of a public pronouncement by the Inspector General. But understand that I have written, and I'm not the only one, but I have written the number of people in the deep state who are against the president, who are still in the administration working against the president of the United States. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the messages here is that they have decided there's still people there who want to get rid of President Trump. And as far as I can tell, there isn't any law that was broken or anything that the president did that was wrong by making a phone call to suggest that a foreign government look into the activities of an American citizen who may have entered into a corrupt transaction with his country.
Well, yeah, if anything, he's trying to repair a relationship that may be damaged with another country. It's actually an act of diplomacy, almost saying, hey, sorry that some of our leaders in the past from America have interfered. What can you tell us about that? Maybe you work with Rudy Giuliani. And I actually think the administration's been very artful this weekend in flipping this on the Democrats. You have the media. I was listening on the way in. The media references the potential corruption in the Ukraine with Joe Biden and his son Hunter Biden, and firing the prosecutor by withholding the $1 billion. I mean, a specific quid pro quo. But they said today on Westwood One News, there is no evidence of Biden being involved. And I'm like, what do you mean there's no evidence? The man is on film. There's videotape of it. I mean, anyway, so what do you think about how the White House has handled this and has flipped this on the Democrats?
They're getting very good at it. The Democrats give them a lot. I mean, the Democrats are saying that this is, quote, another impeachable offense. There's no obstruction of justice here. He didn't break the law. He did his job, as you pointed out, from a diplomacy. But they're always looking for the next smoking gun to try and figure out. And they have a wonderful track record of winding up shooting themselves in the foot or some other part of their body because they try to twist stuff. And they're not very successful at it. And, I think the American people are reaching a point of frustration and disappointment. The president, according to Drudge over the weekend, approval rating is at 52%. They're not getting the effect that they were looking for. It's going the other way.
Yeah, no,
and I think they're making the American people angry.
Okay, now let me ask you this, because this is kind of a combination of issues here. So, former Secret Service agent, also contributor. I think he's got his own show, Dan Bongino. Okay, he tweeted this, and these three tweets I think were very interesting. He said, "This is one of those moments that could change everything. The absolutely corrupt media, in conjunction with their liberal pals and deep state chums, are in a panic. They know that the Inspector General report is going to expose massive Obama administration foreign collusion with Ukraine and Russia. They're also panicking over Joe Biden's actions in Ukraine to block the investigation into his son's questionable business activities. The latest anti-Trump intel leak about the promise to a foreign government is clearly an effort to intimidate Trump into backing away. It's time to give these corrupt anti-Trump lunatics the double-barreled middle finger and to double down on making sure these corruptocrats see justice. The Trump administration must not fall into this intimidation trap. They must plow through and expose these people. So, Dan, I thought that was pretty interesting that Dan Bongino is saying that they are essentially trying to make the president look like he's corrupt with the Ukraine because they know there's a bunch of stuff about to come out on them with a mountain of evidence about what the Obamas and the Clintons and the Bidens did in Ukraine.
I agree with what Dan is saying. I think I have to tell you, when I first saw, this is a long time ago, when I first saw the video of Joe Biden telling the people in the leadership in the Ukraine, either you fire this prosecutor or you don't get the $1 billion. Mm-hmm. I mean, that, as you pointed out, that's very damaging evidence of the then sitting Vice President of the United States trying to intimidate and blackmail a foreign government to drop an investigation into his son's activities. And this, are we going to do the same thing in China with China, where he got an even bigger deal in China?
Let me stop you right there. Once again, we're talking with Dan Perkins. I have this clip. Let's just, for the audience, let's go ahead and play Biden at the Council on Foreign Relations talking about how he put pressure to get the prosecutor fired that was investigating a company where his son was on the board. Listen.
I had gotten a commitment from Poroshenko they would take action against the state prosecutor, and they didn't. I said, I'm telling you, you're not getting $1 billion. I said, you're not getting $1 billion. I'm going to be leaving here. And I think it was, 6 hours? I said, I'm leaving in 6 hours. If the prosecutor's not fired, you're not getting the money. Oh, son of a got fired. And they put in place someone who was solid at the time.
All right, stop.
Well, just so
that's from a RT report. Anyway, Dan, he's that's not the only time he ever referenced this. I mean, he's referenced this multiple times. So there clearly is evidence that, that he got somebody fired who was investigating the company that his son was a board member on.
That's true, but there's another part of the story which is not getting a lot of play, and that is, what was the role of this Ukrainian operation in support of the Hillary campaign, and how they provided information on Paul Manafort, so that it goes beyond Biden. And here's the unspoken word. All of these things are starting to come out, and these things are being said. And at some point in time, somebody's going to start asking this question. What did the president know? When did he know it? And what did he do about it? And we're talking about not Donald Trump, Barack Obama.
Mm-hmm. Well, it certainly is, to watch the media do what they're doing time and time again. It's one lie after another. I mean, they just will not let it go. They want this man out of office, and they're willing to do anything. They're willing to misrepresent a story or not cover. I mean, they're kind of sort of having to at least mention that there are allegations against Biden now, but they're now saying that there's no evidence. And I'm like, well, how do you say there's no evidence, Dan, when you have videos out there like we just saw?
Yeah. Let me, if I might, make a comparison for you.
Yep.
There's a provision of the Muslim law, the Quran, called taqiyya, and it dictates to the Muslim how they must behave when they're talking and dealing with Muslims, and how they deal with infidels, the rest of us. And under that proportion of takia, it allows them to lie, steal, misrepresent, not tell the truth, whatever they want to do, to achieve their objectives. That's exactly what the Democrats are doing. They're actually complying with Sharia law and the Quran, and they make all these wild accusations. And when they're challenged them, they don't know what anybody's talking about. They go move on to something else. And so what I think is going on is that the Democrat Party has converted to the Muslim religion and are following takia.
I take your point. I'm familiar with takia. That does appear to be what they're doing. I mean, in terms of practically, it's a very, very, good comparison. And then, of course, you have the effect. We have not half of the country, but you have a lot of people out there who they still trust the media as an arbiter of truth, and so they have a completely different understanding of reality, and that's what's sad to me. How many people are being deceived right now by the media?
When the media makes a mistake and they print a story, the retraction of that story when they've made a mistake is about 1/10 of the space and coverage of the initial lie. So people hear the story, but they don't really see when the media retracts their story. And I'm actually working on a piece right now, which I think will be somewhat controversial. And that is, maybe the New York Times, maybe it's time, based on the way that the New York Times is acting, the New York Times needs to become registered as a lobbyist in the United States government.
You're right. You're right about that. There's no doubt. Hey, Dan, it's always great to have you on the show. We really appreciate it. And thanks for kind of breaking this down for us. And we'll do it again soon, okay?
Thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure. Take care.
Yes, sir. Dan Perkins. You can, again, check out his book, The Brotherhood of the Red Nile Trilogy, which centers around Islamic nuclear terrorism against the United States. Again, a nationally recognized expert on radical Islam. And you mentioned the takia thing there, which is very interesting. That's essentially what it means is the ends justify the means. If you're talking with takia, if you're talking to somebody that's not a part of your religion, then in order to advance your goals, you can say whatever you want, do whatever you want. You're going to be forgiven of that because you're trying to accomplish. So it doesn't matter how many double standards. It doesn't matter how vile it is. You can, and that appears. I mean, that's a very good comparison to what the media is doing to us, what the Democrats are doing. Just they don't care. I will say this: Pelosi mentioning the I word now, though, right? Pelosi's even saying, well, maybe we do need to impeach over this. They want them to release the transcripts, and the president, rightfully so, is saying, I don't know. I mean, we'll look at releasing the transcripts, but I was having a private conversation with the president of Ukraine. You think he might have said some things that he doesn't want the people to know? That's the whole point. Is the president has broad constitutional authority to maintain diplomatic relations and to say whatever he wants to these leaders. Anyway, we're going to take a break. Don't go anywhere. Back in a moment. And here in Arkansas.
Yeah, I usually don't use a straw when I drink, but they seem to hold up long enough to at least get through your drink.
Well, yeah. So let me just tell you this, or let me ask you this rather. What's been going on in D.C. right now? What's the mood right now in D.C.?
Well, as you know, the federal budget expires on September 30th, so there was a continuing resolution passed yesterday. Surprise, surprise. Seems to be the way things operate here anymore. Instead of doing the appropriation bills, which we've got a whole year to do appropriation bills, to debate spending on the floor and to offer amendments. But instead of doing that, we get a continuing resolution that just keeps up the same amount of spending from the year before. It goes through, I think, November 20th or 21st. And then there'll be another debate about, will the government shut down, or will we do some kind of massive omnibus, or will we do another continuing resolution? So that's the same boat we were in last year, the same boat we're in this year, and It's really the way it's happened since I've been in Congress. It's extremely frustrating.
So are there a lot of your Republican colleagues that are frustrated as well? I mean that we just don't do a normal constitutional budgeting process?
Yeah, there's a lot of people that are fed up with it, but there's not enough to get a majority in the House yet. So, I mean, we didn't even pass a budget bill out of committee this year, much less pass one off the floor and go to or have one passed by the Senate. And it's kind of confusing, the language, because budget bill here means it's the framework for all of these spending. The budget sets the ceiling for expenditures and the floor for taxes, and it provides the framework of how the appropriations are supposed to be written. So the process is usually in March you pass a budget that gives instruction to the appropriation committees on how to write appropriation bills, and it's those 12 appropriation bills that actually fund the discretionary side of spending in the government. But we didn't even get a budget this year, so it's just a continuing resolution right now. There will probably eventually be some kind of omnibus debated between the Speaker, the Minority Leader, the Senate Minority and Majority Leaders, and it's really more their staff than it is the members. And that's what America gets for its discretionary spending bill, which is a whole nother issue, because discretionary spending is only 30% of what the federal government spends. We're having
Determined to drain the swamp in Little Rock, it's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Also, let me just say here about the president. Yes, I mean, you can't ignore the potential political benefits to the president by having the Ukraine look further into the corruption that was supported, apparently, by American diplomats and an American vice president and his son, okay? But how is that President Trump's fault, though? And what I mean by that is it's Joe Biden that was stupid enough to run for president, knowing that all this was out there and part of the public record. You know what I mean? Like, he's the one. I mean, and honestly, if he hadn't have run for president, you'd still have the same thing. Meaning, like, if the Senate had an inquiry into Hunter Biden or Joe Biden's dealings in China, that $1 billion deal, which is much larger than what happened in Russia with the energy company. I mean, if he hadn't run for president, people would say he would actually have less insulation. But because he's running for president, I mean, honestly, it makes me wonder if Joe Biden ran for president just so he could be a little bit more insulated and claim that, oh, well, you're targeting me because I'm your political rival. I mean, if he hadn't run for president, it would kind of be an open and shut case, wouldn't it? I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like, people are like, well, I mean, I know you used to be the vice president, but, I mean, you're not running for anything now. You're retired, but we do have to look into these dealings of corruption that we found. And your son, seriously, think about this. Not just, but the president doesn't care. He's not going to let that get in the way. I just find the whole thing fascinating and also kind of funny to me that these guys are actually being exposed, at least by people on the right. At least we know the truth, that it's not anything with what the mainstream media says. And for the mainstream media to say there's no proof about what Joe Biden and his son did in Ukraine is ridiculous. There's proof everywhere. The man has talked about it multiple times. Here is, and we've been talking about this for a while, too, because this is back May of this year. Peter Schweitzer, he has his book about how, you guys have heard about his book, right? It's about how the Chinese, for example, do things to enrich the children of politicians, and it's perfectly illegal. They can just give politicians, they can't give politicians money, the Chinese government, but they can give the children of American politicians. They can give them money through different means and ways and employment and that sort of thing. And how it is this scandal in the highest degree that is just overlooked because there's so many people in Washington, and I suspect elsewhere, that have been bought off. This is what he said to thehill.com, Peter Schweitzer. He said, quote, "What I've called for simply is for the Senate to call former second son, Hunter Biden, to come and testify and people to look into this. We're talking about large deals and large sums of money. It involves countries like China, which are America's chief rival on the global stage." He says, in the case of the Ukraine, the very energy company that was paying Hunter Biden millions of dollars was under investigation in the Ukraine for corruption. Ukrainian officials have claimed that Joe Biden pressured them to suspend or end that investigation. That's in fact what the Ukraine did. Obviously, we have Joe Biden saying that there was a quid pro quo with, hey, you fire this guy investigating this company that where my son's making millions of dollars, or I'm not going to give the country $1 billion of U.S. aid, taxpayer money. And they're talking about there might have been a quid pro. By the way, now reports are saying there was no quid pro quo with the president, with President Trump talking to the new president of Ukraine. It was, the media's probably not going to tell you that. So, let's just kind of wait and see on this. I'm telling you, though, the Arkansas connection, you can't mention this without talking about the Arkansas connection, because, you have Hunter Biden getting $1 billion Chinese deal. He was on the plane with the vice president when it flew to China. It just, the whole thing stinks. And then we have to bring up Arkansas because, again, the state of Arkansas is in the process of trying to bring 6 communist Chinese entities, or entities that represent the Communist Party of China, into our state to revitalize factories or reopen factories or build factories. And we have the head of the Arkansas political establishment facilitating this, thinks that it's okay, willing to give taxpayer resources, Arkansas taxpayer incentives, with the hope that one day, that when these Communist Party entities get here, that they're going to be, how do you say it, they're going to create jobs, if you will. Oh, by the way, there's a whole nother leg to this Arkansas, I want to just say, conspicuousness. It's just very conspicuous. The Democrat Party of Arkansas, the Democrat Party of the country, as well as the Democrat Party of Arkansas, they're right now struggling with socialists in their own party. I mean, avid socialists, not soft socialists that will want to get to socialism, but they want to do it by lying to you. They're actually really struggling with the honesty of the socialists in their party. Beto O'Rourke, we're going to take your guns, Ocasio-Cortez. Anyway, socialism is a big problem right now in the Democrat Party because the American people don't want socialism, and yet you have all of these Democrats coming out and talking about socialism and how, we need universal income. We don't, if you don't necessarily have to work. The Green New Deal, we've only got 12 years to live. This kind of garbage. The Democrat Party is struggling with the idea of socialism. And in that moment, in that movement where we have essentially a way, I think the Republican Party has a way to just set the Democrat Party back a long way, if not out and out, maybe even eliminate it. State of Arkansas, we're trying to bring Communist Party companies into the state during this time. That's like a whole nother leg of this that nobody wants to talk about. That's the way I see it. I'm like, wait a second. Democrats are all about socialism. They're being honest that they're actually socialists. People are going to reject it. And then the head of the Arkansas Republican Party, our governor, is trying to bring the communists here. But for some reason it's okay because it's China. But imagine if it was Russia. People would be freaking out, understandably so. And China is a much bigger threat to us than Russia is. Why China? Somebody tell me why.
Broadcasting from the Baker Implement Studios. Baker Implement, serving you with 11 convenient locations. This is News Talk 101.3 FM and 12:30 AM KBTM, Jonesboro.
Well, getting the discretionary spending part right, but the elephant in the room is the mandatory spending, which nothing happens to slow that. And I just got a new budget report that shows how healthcare is the single largest component of mandatory spending, and the 10-year budget window shows that, and they state this on terms of percent of GDP. Healthcare right now is at like 5.5% of the GDP. That's how much we spend on healthcare. In 10 years, they're projecting it will be at like 6.8% of GDP. So as GDP grows, the amount of the GDP that goes towards healthcare will grow as well. So it's a real increase in healthcare spending. And until we address that, the deficit and the debt are never going to go the direction that we want them to go.
Yeah, and that's troublesome. And I used to talk about the national debt all the time, and I'll admit I really never talk about it. It's just not something people. And so we do have a day of reckoning coming. Something's got to be done at some point. We're talking with Congressman Bruce Westerman. Did you see where Nancy Pelosi, according to reports behind closed doors in the Democrat caucus, was kind of jabbing Jerry Nadler over these impeachment hearings? And I think she compared him to like Captain Ahab, trying to just constantly looking for the white whale Moby Dick. Did you hear that?
I haven't heard that, but that's kind of funny if that's what's happening. I've heard there's a lot of contention behind closed doors in the Democratic caucus. You've got the squad, you got the ultra left. I mean, I always thought Pelosi was ultra left, but she's one of the voices of reason in the Democratic Party in the House right now.
That's wild to say. That's crazy.
I mean, that tells you how far left some of these new freshman members are.
Yeah.
And it's no wonder they're coming up with ideas like the Green New Deal and Medicare for all and a guaranteed income whether you want to work or not. Free college, do away with all combustion engines, do away with cows. Some kind of utopian ideas they've got there that I don't even know where they make that stuff up.
Well, I mean, and I don't understand how they think they're going to win. Andrew Yang came out and said the other day that we have to alter American diets in order to control the weather, again, climate change. Do these people think they're actually going to win? I mean, I've got a story right here, Congressman. This is actually really funny to me, where NBC, they ask for people's climate confessions. Well, like, what do you do to that you need to correct that's bad for the environment? And the American people, they respond to NBC News making fun of climate change. And, one person says, I eat meat every day and won't stop because it's good. Somebody else, who cares? I'll do what I like. I'll floor it in my gas-guzzling sports car for fun. You do not matter to me. Somebody else, I'm eating bacon with breakfast this morning, and I'll have it again tomorrow. I mean, this is my favorite one. I like my house to be 85 in the winter and 55 in the summer. Deal with it, hippies. I mean, the American people are not buying this, and yet they're running presidential campaigns on it.
I was with the president at the end of last week. He is chomping at the bit to go against this field of candidates they've got. I don't know who the chosen one will be on that side, but I think President Trump's going to be well prepared for them.
I think you're right about that. It just seems that there's never. Oh, let me ask you this. Let me get your response to this. One of those candidates, Beto O'Rourke, openly admitted that if he has his way, he's going to confiscate our AR-15s. I mean,
yeah, I wonder how many times that sound clip will get played on election commercials in the 2020 cycle.
I mean, I hope they do. They wear it out. I really do, because I think the Democrat. I mean, I've always said, people like me, conservative talk radio hosts, the left wants to confiscate our guns, and here they are finally admitting it. It's not about common sense gun control. It's about the fact they want to disarm us.
Yep, that's. I mean, they're finally kind of taking the camouflage off and showing the world exactly who they are, and they think that they're going to be accepted for that.
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
Okay, folks, welcome to the program. Thank you so much for being with us. We really appreciate it. Coming up at the bottom of this hour, we're going to be talking with State Representative Jack Ladyman, who announced he's going to be running for re-election for House District 59. So it's always great to talk to Jack and have him on the program. I had a great first hour, talked a lot about the vaping tax and Senator Jim Hendren's appearance on Talk Business and Politics. That's at the very top of the hour. Then we had a conversation with Dan Perkins about this whistleblower and everything else. The whistleblower, the Ukraine, and anyway, I think we covered it pretty well. Little personal story. I hope, first of all, everybody had a great weekend. I had a really good weekend, and one of the reasons was, so I built a woodshed. I had bought the lumber, I guess, a couple of weeks ago. I have all this post oak that I have for cooking brisket. And it's just been sitting there. It's time to split it, and it's time to get it put up. But I didn't have anything to keep it off the ground, and so I bought the lumber. Okay, I'm gonna build this. It's basically a wood rack, but it's pretty tall. I mean, it's 8 feet tall, and got a nice tin roof on it now and everything. But man, I'm telling you, I'm sitting there trying to build it this weekend, and it was the most. I felt so emasculated. I don't know, guys. That's just my confession to you men out there. I had all the pieces. I knew what I was supposed to do. I know how I wanted to look. I had bought everything. I had prepared. But I'm sitting there, and you guys ever do this where you just end up looking at it, and you just cannot for the life of you figure out how to get started. Now I know a lot of you men out there, that's not you at all. But I mean, I don't necessarily build things that often, believe it or not. And so I was sitting there, and I was like, I could not. And so I number one, I started praying. I was like, Lord, let this be for your glory. But I was getting so frustrated. And anyway, so I was like, so I walked down the hill. I've got this hill in my backyard. I walk down the hill. I go in, and there's my wife, and there's my daughter. And I just look at my wife, and I'm like, I feel so emasculated right now, but I think I need your help. And so I asked my wife for help. So we get our daughter dressed, and we go up there, and I really just needed a second pair of hands. So she held the big 8 foot pole, the 8 foot tall post, and I got to screw in the base. And anyway, from there we spent about an hour up there, the three of us, building a woodshed, or building the beginnings of one. And man, it was like the greatest part of my weekend, So anyway, guys, I'll just say all that to say this. Don't be afraid to ask for help, because sometimes you end up having. I had a much better time up there in being outside building a woodshed with my family than I would have if I had just been by myself the whole time. Anyway, telephone number 870-275-9799. The Arkansas Times. I told you last hour that I kind of feel sorry for Max Brantley, and I know people are like, he's a big progressive. He runs the Arkansas Times website. But I do, because Max Brantley woke up today, like all other liberals and progressives did, wanting the president to be impeached, and they have bought into this phony lie that they now have another way to do it. And, even Arkansas's Max Brantley of the Arkansas Times. I kind of feel sorry that they don't understand that what they're peddling is not based in truth. They don't have the whole story here. And he's, writing that the Washington Post has a piece today where they're opining, is Trump actually invincible, or does he think he's invincible? Trying to scare people even more that we have some sort of, a dictatorial president. He writes, Donald Trump's coercion of Ukraine to harm a political rival is only the latest good reason to impeach him, even if there's a certainty no Republican senator would vote for conviction. So Max Brantley is now on board with conviction. Nancy Pelosi says maybe, or impeachment, rather. Impeachment. Remember Maxine Waters? Impeachment, impeachment, impeachment. So, And I just wanted to, you got to be in reality. You have this video queued up. I wanted to play this one more time. Joe, you have this video queued up? So I read this morning. Trump is now braying that Ukraine is just another witch hunt. And to name one, the New York Times is again shamefully engaging in the false equivalency game. Its coverage of Trump and Ukraine is inside the print edition of the newspaper today, and the coverage is more about Trump's whataboutism concerning previously investigated and unsupported innuendo about Joe Biden's son. Innuendo, Max? Max Brantley, innuendo? Listen to this. How is this innuendo when your guy, Joe Biden, is bragging to CFR, the Council on Foreign Relations, about a quid pro quo to keep his son from being investigated? Listen.
From Poroshenko, they would take action against the state prosecutor, and they didn't. I said, I'm telling you, you're not getting $1 billion. I said, you're not getting $1 billion. I'm going to be leaving here, and I think it was, 6 hours? I said, I'm leaving in 6 hours. If the prosecutor's not fired, you're not getting the money. Well, son of a got fired. And they put in place someone who was solid at the time.
Yeah.
Well, it just so happens
solid that's going to protect your son and the company he was working for being paid millions. Was it $50,000 a month? Oh man, by the way, when this company in Ukraine was paying Joe Biden's son $50,000 a month, and all I can think about was Senator Jeremy Hutchinson in Arkansas, getting paid $9,000 a month, or whatever he was getting paid by the Medicaid companies. I don't know. The monthly income is what they really want, right? Anyway, so I just thought, really, Max Brandt, how delusional are these people on the left, and they're right here in Arkansas, and this is a delusion. And it's and this is somehow Trump's fault for bringing this up. You don't think that hurt American relationships a little bit with at least half of the country of Ukraine, where they're trying to go after corruption in their own country, and the United States vice president keeps them from doing it or continuing to investigate, and then you don't think that hurts diplomatic relationships a little bit in Ukraine? And I'm sorry, it's not Trump's fault that Joe Biden decided to run for president. This stuff's been out there the whole time. And Max Brantley says, again, and the coverage is more about Trump's whataboutism concerning previously investigated and unsupported innuendo about Joe Biden's son. I don't know. Maybe Max has never seen the videos of Joe Biden bragging about this. Not just, I want the investigator fired, but I will give you essentially, it's not that I won't give you $1 billion. It's, hey, I'll give you this $1 billion of U.S. taxpayer money if you fire that guy. I'm sorry, what? Are we living in reality here? Again, this is sad to me. I feel sorry for people who are progressives. I know you're not getting what you want in the Trump administration. I know you want socialism or whatever, whatever the progressives want. More control over people's lives, or, bigger government, bigger welfare state, whatever you guys want, that I disagree with. But come on, man. Quit taking the bait. I don't understand how even local progressive media, like Arkansas Times, can't figure out that the media is doing themselves such a disservice, and they're actually helping the president get reelected by constantly thinking that they're going to have the next smoking gun to get Trump out of office. It's this constant pressure. We've got him now. We've got him now. And then the real story comes out. We find out that the guy didn't even hear or read. He found out, the whistleblower found out through other means. I mean, and then you find out that the president there wasn't a quid pro quo like, hey, we'll give you this if you investigate Joe Biden's son. No, it was just, hey, he's trying to repair diplomatic relationships, and of course they mentioned Joe Biden. And yes, and essentially, hey, feel free to investigate. And now the media's like, we demand the transcript. The Democrats like, we demand the transcripts. And I'm like, really? That's a private conversation. There's stuff on there the Ukraine president may have said. We don't know, that he doesn't want the world to know. They're trying to obstruct this president at every turn. And it's not Trump's fault that Joe Biden ran for president when there's all of this stuff out there on him and his family. Maybe Joe Biden ran because he thought it would protect him from this level of scrutiny, because he'd be able to say, this is a political witch hunt, and and of course Hillary Clinton's out there, Trump once again colluding with the foreign power to influence an election. We're about to find out who really colluded with some foreign powers. That's my gut instinct on this whole thing. And what will Max Brantley of the Arkansas Times do? I don't know. Probably not understand, not be able to process what's actually going on around us. Anyway, and he ends his piece, Max Brantley ends his piece by saying Arkansas's Republican congressional delegation stands mute. As if he's upset, or he is upset, that the our sixth delegation, or our six-person delegation to Washington, D.C. is not out there criticizing this. It's because we've got people getting completely different information. And people want to say, and I said this the other week, well, the truth is somewhere in the middle. I'm not so sure it is anymore. And that's scary to me, right? I think you have, with these news stories and the media, what they're doing, I really think you've got one side that has it completely wrong, and you have the other side that has it right. I'm not going to say completely right, but has it really close to the truth about what's actually happening. And yeah, I think it's my side. Yeah, I think conservatives are on the winning side about what actually is going on here. The progressives left, they say there's no deep state, yet they're mounting evidence. Just because CNN's not covering the fact that the deep state's real, that doesn't mean that an observer, like a normal person, can't sit back and just be a free thinker. And right now, if you're just a free, independent thinker, I think you're looking at what's going on and you're saying, I don't believe what CNN is telling me. I don't believe what Max Brantley is writing this article from a basis where he doesn't have all the facts. He just doesn't like Trump. Orange man bad. Get him out of office. And that's where we are right now. Unbelievable. And I'll remind you of this real quick. Dan Bongino on this story. They're panicked. Let's see here. They know, listen to this, they know the IG report is going to expose massive Obama administration foreign collusion with the Ukraine and Russia. And so a lot of people think this deep state whistleblower did this, and now, of course, it's flipped, and it's now, they're all talking about Joe Biden, which is not what the media wanted. And I will say one more thing. We got to take a break here, going to reset. There's at least one Republican who is upset that Trump talked to the Ukrainian president and mentioned Joe Biden and Hunter Biden in the scandal there, and that's Mitt Romney. And I just thought to myself, Mitt Romney is now a caricature of a rhino. I mean, we know he's a rhino, but now he's fake news media is saying something else about Trump. Well, what would a rhino do? Oh, I don't know. Mitt. What do you think, Mitt? Oh. Okay, you got a problem with it? You're believing everything you read on CNN? Oh, okay. All right. Well, there we go. Mitt Romney, everybody. Congratulations. Oh, and by the way, remember when everybody used to be so anti-Russia, but they were pro-Ukraine? Like, we got to support Ukraine, and the president's talking to the new president of Ukraine, and now all of a sudden, Ukraine's bad again. Maybe it has something to do with the fact that they don't like who the president is. We're going to take a break. We're going to reset here. We're going to be back. Coming up at the bottom of this hour, we'll be talking with State Representative Jack Ladyman. Don't go anywhere. This is Conduit News. Happy Monday.
And for the sake of our country, I sure hope they're not accepted for who they're portraying themselves to be.
Yeah. So what's the president like? I mean, you say you've been around him. I mean, what is he like? Is he just like the way we see him at his rallies, and the way, obviously not the way the media portrays him, but what's he
I
like?
was with him for two events last, I guess it was last Thursday evening. We had kind of a small group meeting with him without any press in it. Then we had a dinner that was, I think it was being live streamed. There was a lot of press at the dinner. And if you can imagine President Trump being a little more off script and unrehearsed than he is in his rallies, and when he's on TV, that's what he's like in a small group. And he's really he's funny. He's got a great sense of humor, and he had kind of a little field day with the Democratic.
Bob Maloney here with a developing story from ASA News The Parrot. China is coming to Arkansas. We go live to the press conference where the Communist Chinese executive is addressing Arkansans for the first time. Let's listen into the translator.
On behalf of the government of the People's Republic of China, we invite you to come and visit the newest named city in Arkansas, China, Delphia. We are very pleased to own an American city. Our communist government is proud to do business with the mediocre state of Arkansas. We are happy to take your money and your trees and send the profits back home. The Communist government of China was pleased to learn the taxpayers of Arkansas are excited to contribute their money with the hope, if you build it, one day jobs will come. We are excited to take your fields of capitalism and turn them into fields of communism, where every Arkansan has nightly dreams of Mao. China is looking forward to our investment of $1 billion in what is now called Arkansas. We see this as an investment in our future, and that future will be called New Beijing. Chinese investment will make Arkansas a great place for jobs, as the People's Republic of China will succeed where the Soviets failed. As we build our roots deep in Arkansas, we are thrilled with the potential new ideas and advancement we will share with our people back home. Soon we will have the world's largest runway in the South China Sea, and we thank Arkansas for contributing to our noble cause. In closing, once we make China great again, all of you will see the glory of the revolution of Mao. And Arkansas, whatever you do, please never call the FBI.
Paul Harrell, Parrot.
Exposing the truth and everything the Marble Palace establishment keep trying to cover up. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
The black population in Arkansas is 15%, and there's a group of people that are upset that there are not black judges, and they're claiming that the fact that we elect our judges is a violation of Section 2 of the Federal Voting Rights Act of 1965. Meaning, black voters are only 15% of the population here in Arkansas, and it says here that inhibits their ability to elect their judicial candidates of choice in violation of... Well, I mean, first of all, the assumption is racist in and of itself, because you're saying that black voters would vote for a judge only because the judge is black. I mean, to me, that's racist in and of itself. But I mean, but disclaimer, I'm white and I'm a man, and I'm only sexually interested in women, specifically my wife. So what am I? I'm cisgendered. So right? Cisgendered. Why is it cis? It's like, so I'm a sissy-gendered male. It's CIS. Okay. Anyway, so take that for what it's worth. But that kind of sounds racist to me. It's like the whole lawsuit. They've sued the state. And the state of Arkansas is saying, hey, we need to throw this lawsuit out. And they're asking a federal judge to dismiss the lawsuit because this doesn't make any sense. And so we now got a federal judge, Linda Satter, Arkansas Democrat Gazette, writing that a federal judge is reviewing the state's request to throw out a lawsuit alleging that the way judges are elected to the State Court of Appeals and the Supreme Court is racially discriminatory. It's racially discriminatory because we've never elected a black judge. Let's see, it's a civil rights group, attorneys, and they want the creation of a single majority-minority district for the Supreme Court and 2 majority-minority districts. Okay, so they're wanting us to change our court districts to where the black population is the majority in those districts. Now, that in and of itself would be racist, would it not? Because why are you doing this? Well, we're doing this because we think all black people vote the same way. Because of the color of their skin, they're going to vote in unison. How is that not racist itself? I mean, how is that not really offensive? I wonder what Candace Owens would think of this from Turning Point. It's unbelievable, honestly. But hey, this is about civil rights. I think it's about more discrimination, not less, but maybe that's just me. I'm white, and I'm male, and I'm heterosexual, so I guess my opinion doesn't count as much. And that's not racist at all either, by the way. Now, there's been no black person ever elected to the high court, the Supreme Court, but there have been black justices appointed to complete the terms of justice, when they left, if they left early or they left before their terms were expired. There's 12 Court of Appeals judges, and they're elected from 7 districts, five of which elect 2 members. The only black judge on that court is Wayman Brown, who was elected by the single-member 7th District, which the lawsuit says is 49% black. According to the U.S. Census, Arkansas's population is 15% black. The lawsuit challenges the state's method of electing appellate judges, which it alleges dilutes the voting strength of black voters, which in turn inhibits their ability to elect their judicial candidates of choice in violation of the Section 2 of the Federal Voting Rights Act of 1965. So the Solicitor General, Vincent Wagner, has complained that the plaintiffs want the U.S. District Judge James Moody to fashion a new judicial system for Arkansas, abandoning statewide elections for the Arkansas Supreme Court that have been in place for 145 years. So now that's a big problem, We hadn't talked about this in a while, but I think it's a good thing that if you want to sit on the Arkansas Supreme Court, you've got to run a statewide race, and everybody, I don't agree with the appointing of justices. And specifically, I'm okay with the election of justice because it is only an 8-year term. It's not like they're lifetime appointments either. So, eventually, if the people were to make a mistake that the sentient lawyers they claim they would have made a better one. It's only 8 years. It's only 8 years of tyranny, folks, or potential tyranny. But anyway, let me know what you guys think about this story. I've just found it so odd that we have civil rights groups they're upset that there's not a black Supreme Court justice, and so they've sued. And again, Arkansas's population is 15% black. So assuming what I think is the racist assumption, but assuming that all black people think and vote alike, you're only 15% of the population. I mean, oh, by the way, that also assumes that the rest of the population that's not black would never vote for a black justice because they're black. So it's also assuming that there's no white people that would ever vote for a black judge, which is not true either. Maybe in the minds of progressives it's true, but it's not reality. We're going to be right back with State Representative Jack Ladyman. Don't go anywhere.
Slate there, and they were getting ready for, I think they had a debate that night. Yeah, that's one thing he said during the dinner at his speech. He said, he talked about the ratings for this speech he was giving was probably higher than the Democratic debate. And I don't even know if it was on national TV or not. And then he had fun with the, he talked about how Trump's such a good name, good political name, and he started talking about Mayor Pete and trying to say his last name. That was pretty funny.
Yeah, we can't really say it here either. We struggle with it. Pete Butt Edge is the only way you can pronounce it.
Trump says you got it. It's edge. He said you have to. It's butt edge is how you say it.
It's pretty funny. I mean, it really will be a riot now. Elizabeth Warren seems to be surging. But Joe Biden just keeps hanging around and talking in circles. I mean, nobody knows what Joe Biden's talking about. It'll be regardless. Anybody in that field at this point would be very entertaining to watch the president debate and really just campaign. Now,
when you talk about the issues, I mean, Trump's great just with one-liners and things like that, but it's when you focus on the issues is where he's going to destroy them. Mm-hmm. Like, they don't want to talk about the economy, the fact that the economy's doing well. They want to call the president a racist, but they don't want to talk about how unemployment for minorities is the lowest it's ever been, how unemployment for women is the lowest it's ever been, and how wages are up. They don't want to talk about any of that.
I know you and your Republican colleagues in the House want to get back in power. You guys want to take back the House from the Democrats. So these impeachment hearings, Jerry Nadler and his committee, I mean, it's kind of a dog and pony show because, I mean, a lot of these Democrats that beat Republicans last time in the midterms were from moderate districts. And I think a lot of those people believe that what the media was telling them about Donald Trump being a KGB agent. Now that the Mueller report's out and that's been debunked, there was no collusion. I just think, I mean, it'd be great for you guys if they did have an impeachment vote because I think it would show that the Democrats are being led by the squad and it would help the Republicans take back the chamber. What are your thoughts on the Republicans taking back the House of Representatives in 2020?
I think there's a really good opportunity to do that. If you look at the midterm elections, there were 31 Republican seats that we lost that President Trump won that district in 2016. So with him back on the ballot, I think it's going to turn out a lot more vote. And we've only got to win back 19 seats to get the majority.
Need your daily news fix? Don't forget to tune in to Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, folks, hey, welcome back to the program. As you can see, the microphone has kind of switched sides. That means we have a live guest in studio. I want to welcome back to the program State Representative Jack Ladyman is with us. Jack, how are you, sir?
Doing good, Paul. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. It's always great to have you on. Can you just talk a little bit about an announcement that you made? I saw on Facebook a day or so ago. So what's the announcement?
Well, I really wanted to get that out sooner, but I was thinking about it, praying about it, making sure that I wanted to make the right decision. But I have decided to run for another term. Of course, it'd be my fourth term. I believe we've done a lot in the last 3 sessions, largest tax cut, income tax cut in history. We've had 3 income tax cuts, and I know there's been some tax increases, but I think we've done some great things. And there's more work to do, and I want to be a part of that. This job is not easy, I'll tell people that. You see some people not wanting to run for a 4th or 5th term because it is a difficult job, and it's part-time.
Yeah.
So it takes a lot of your effort. And some people just get burned out, quite honestly. But I think we need to do what we can, and I want to talk a little bit about the positives in a minute. But we need to promote our state. We need to talk about positive things. Some of the things that grab all the airtime nowadays are really negative. They don't help us. They don't help move our state forward. They don't help the people of Arkansas. We need to talk about things that make the lives better of Arkansans, and that's what I like to talk about. So that's the reason I want to go back. I think I've still got something to give, and I want to help the state move forward.
Well, I will say I always definitely know that you are a positive guy. You definitely want to look. You're a half full, glasses half full kind of guy.
Yeah, some people say I'm too positive sometimes, but hey, I'll take that.
Well, some people say I'm too negative. So
goes
anyway.
both ways, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. So talk a little bit about one of the things that I watched you do this past session was chair the public health committee. I thought you did a really good job of that because there was a lot of bills that came your way that were they were hard. I mean, it's a very busy committee, right?
It's a difficult committee, a very important committee, very important things. When you talk about the health of people, and a lot of people don't realize, but all of the work-related bills come through that committee. So we're talking, workers' comp, the environment, lots of things come through there. But I really enjoyed that job. One of the favorite things I used to like when I was mayor was running the city council meetings. And I know some of the mayors are laughing when they hear that because that's tough because you get all kinds of people and viewpoints coming in, and you're bouncing a lot of balls. You got a lot of balls in the air. But to me, that is really enjoyable because you see people coming out. You know what is important to people when they come out to these meetings, and they're adamant about their beliefs. And that's the same way with these committees. You attended some of the meetings, and the rooms were full. We had to have security guards in there a couple of times.
Yeah.
And we went late at night. I think one night we went till 9:30. Matt had to come down and tell me to quit because I was keeping the guys too late.
Yeah.
But it's important, and it's a lot of energy there, and you know that these things are important to people when they come out like that. When they drive all the way to Little Rock and they sit down in front of 20 state representatives to present their point, it's an important thing to them.
We're talking with State Representative Jack Ladyman. Where did you fall down again on it seemed like the one deregulation bill that the medical society was against, but it got through, was the optometrist deregulation. And now we have this movement to try to put it on the ballot to undo it. What are your thoughts on all that drama?
Well, that's a deep subject. We could spend a whole show on that one. But, there's two sides to this question. The medical community, they're wanting to protect their turf, but they're sincere about that. They want high-quality medical care, and that's great. The other side is we want to be able to provide medical care to rural areas in Arkansas at as low a cost as possible and as high a quality as possible. So that's the debate. And I've had many discussions with Dr. Spite out here at NYIT, Dr. Patterson at UAMS. I've gone to meetings in Denver and Nashville and talked to other chairmen of other committees in other states about this issue. It's an issue for everybody. So what it comes down to is we're debating a number of scope of practice bills which would allow treatment in rural areas. The question is, can you maintain the quality of that treatment out in these rural areas with people that do not have the same level of education? So the nurse practitioners don't have as much education as the doctors, optometrists don't have as much education as the ophthalmologist. So where's the sweet spot there?
Yeah.
How do we provide that medical care at the accepted quality level in rural areas without affecting our doctors and our good medical system that we have? So that's the question. And we had about 4 of those bills. The optometrist bill was the only one that got out of committee and eventually got out of the legislature.
And signed by the governor.
And so again, as I said earlier, you have groups that are very adamant, and the medical community, and I don't hold this against them, they're adamant about maintaining high quality standards. And that's why you see them going so far and spending so much money on this issue. The other thing is, this is the first issue. There will be others. We have 20 interim studies, not all of them are medical, for the Public Health Committee. That's the most of any committee down there. So we've got 20 things that are being studied in the interim. And again, that could be another full show. But so there's a lot of interest in this. A number of them are these scope of practice bills. So we're going to see much more of that. And the battle is going to be strong. It's going to be. And I was talking to, well, I won't say who, but one of the medical professionals the other day, and I said, where I stand on this is education. So in the interim, I want to bring information to the committee members so that they understand, because some of them are not doctors or nurses. So because if you don't have the knowledge, when a subject comes up, the two sides go to their corners.
Yeah.
And they stand firm on that because they don't know. They don't have the information. And we don't want that. You can't accomplish anything like that. So you've got to have the education out there, let people understand, have knowledge of what we're discussing.
Yeah.
Because I'll just use the doctors and nurses as an example. Doctors are going to believe one thing, nurses are going to believe one thing. We on this committee, which are made up of doctors, nurses, engineers, whatever, are going to have to make the decision. So we hear both sides. So the more knowledge that we have of these two sides, the better decision we're going to make. But there are going to be changes in Arkansas in the medical application. And I want to make sure that we're making the correct ones.
Yeah.
The best thing I can do is to help educate or get knowledge to the people making that decision.
What do you think, though, about the fact that the Medical Society, they did take this one loss with the bill that allowed optometrists to do, say, what optometrists in Oklahoma have been doing for 20 years. The ophthalmologists think that it's a major change. Optometrists say it's minor and that they're already trained to do this in optometry school. It was debated vigorously.
Right.
I mean, it was.
Yes, it was.
And it passed vigorous debate in the committees and on the House floor and vice versa on the other side.
And it was a close vote.
But then it was signed. And now the ophthalmologist lobby comes back. They start paying for signatures. They're trying to undo what we just did. Now, obviously, it's their right to do that. But what are your thoughts on trying to undo what you guys just put in place?
Well, obviously, I don't like that because the people elected us and we went and made the decision. We made the votes. So what they're doing is going against the will of the people when they do that. And as you know, that's not a good thing. When the people talk, I like to listen, and I try to listen. And I think everyone should take that approach, but everyone doesn't. But again, you've got to put yourself in their shoes. They're protecting their turf.
That's true.
And they feel adamantly about that. I mean, we could talk about gun control, the same thing. You have these groups that feel so strongly about that they're going to do everything in their power, take every opportunity and use every political or legal tool that they can to hold their turf. Mm-hmm. And the medical society is no different than the gun lobby. They're protecting what they think and adamantly think is the right thing to do.
Yeah.
And that's why they do that. I don't hold grudges. I don't feel badly towards a group for doing what they think is right. I'll disagree with them.
Right, exactly.
But then I'll go buy them a cup of coffee, and we have to do that. We
Yeah.
have to be that way. We really do. But before I forget, the Public Health, Welfare, and Labor Committee that I chair, we're in a joint session now. So we have joint, Senate and House together. And I'll be chairing the October meeting. So I'm having that in Jonesboro.
Wow. Okay.
On the 7th and the 8th. And we're going to be out at the Human Development Center. We're going to tour that. We're going to have a presentation by the architectural group that's looking at updating and rebuilding some of the HDCs around the state. They've already started in Booneville. They're looking at Jonesboro. We've got new ideas on how to improve those, so that's going to be on the agenda. And I'll miss some things here, but we're going to meet there. We're going to be out at ASU that night to tour the new convention center. So we're going to bring about 50 people here from all around the state, and they're going to see. I mean, Jonesboro Human Development Center is one of the best in the state. I think it's the best, but it's one of the best. We got this convention center coming up. People are going to see that. We're going to go to ASU. They're going to see what's done out that campus.
Yeah.
The next day, we're going to be out at the NEA Baptist Hospital at their conference room for a meeting and talk about medical issues. Then the chamber is going to present our industry here in Jonesboro, which is the best in the state. I know I'm right about that because I've been around the state and lived in other areas. So they're going to present what we have here in industry out in our industrial park. Then we're going to take a bus tour out in the industrial park and go to one of the factories. So
that sounds like it's in October. Do you know the date?
October 7th and 8th. That'll be a Monday and a Tuesday.
Okay. Wow. Well, that's a big deal, Jack.
It's a big deal.
Yeah.
And that's why, Paul, our legislators that have been down there a while now, me included and some of the other guys, we've been there long enough. We know people. We've got into a leadership role, and don't get me wrong here. I mean, I'm not running the. If I was running the show, I'd do things differently. But I am involved in the leadership, and some of the other people from Craighead County and Northeast Arkansas are as well. And just to give you an example, when the speaker during the session had his weekly management meeting, I sat on his right hand. I was the right-hand seat. Dwight Tosh was in there. We were at the table. So what that says is we have input on these decisions. That helps our area of the state. And so we want to promote our area of the state. And I know you have listeners in other parts of the state. We're for Arkansas. But again, as I said earlier, we got to present our interests.
You represent your district. I mean,
my first job is to represent District 59. My second job is to represent Arkansas.
Yeah. We're talking with State Representative Jack Ladyman. He's announced that he will be running for re-election, and so that is a big deal. We wanted to have him on today. Jack, let me ask you real quick, because I've got to ask you, and I will preface this question by saying that State Representative Mickey Gates says he understands why Matthew Shepard is moving forward, and he doesn't hold any grudge or anything like that. But have you made up your mind yet as to how you think, does he need to be expelled at this point?
Well, what I believe we have to do, and let me just say that Speaker Shepard has done a great job on working on this. Now, I know some people thought he should have done things earlier, but he's taken his time, he's looked at the laws, and he's heard from the different sides. I think he's done a great job. I think he's done the right thing. And I know that many people have talked to Representative Gates personally about this. It would be better if he would resign. Again, I know that he feels strongly about his side, but I think he needs to look at the effect on the state, on the legislature, and on him. And he needs to make the right decision. Being right and having power is not always the right thing. Sometimes you have to make a decision that might not be what you want to do, or it might not be within the power you have, but a good person makes that right decision for everybody.
Yeah.
And I wish Representative Gates would do that. My personal opinion is whatever the law says is what I'm going to follow. And I think most of the folks in the House will do that. It seems to be pretty clear now that there is at least one law that
you guys voted on
have
in
to
the last,
follow.
Yeah, the one in the last session.
If that is the deciding law, then expulsion is probably what's going to have to happen.
Yeah. What do you think about? I've read the interviews that Mickey Gates did, and it's like what you said. Being right versus thinking about
doing the right thing.
Because really, this is an image thing. I mean, if we're honest about this, whether you think he should be expelled or not, it doesn't look good when you have somebody who's pled no contest for not paying taxes and that sort of thing. Although I think the whole thing is very interesting. I saw in the paper where Joe Jett was saying we need to go through this other process where both sides, DFNA and Mickey Gates, will be able to present their case. From what I can tell, Mickey Gates thinks that the DFNA did something wrong. I mean, with this whole process.
Yeah.
And he does cite the fact that he was arrested, and the press was tipped off. But he wasn't arraigned for 3 months, which ended up being like a week before early voting. That's when he was arraigned, and he still got reelected. So,
and Paul, we know that there are things that go on like that are politically motivated by government people. I won't say agencies, but it's bad actors in the government
yeah, we
agency.
definitely know that. Look at what's going on
We know
at
that
the federal
happens. And I mean, Mickey may be exactly right on this. I don't know. But again, the letter of the law, if it's a clear violation of a law, what you're talking about is another issue.
Okay.
We have to be very clear about what the law is, and we have to follow the law. Because that's what the people expect us to do.
And just to be clear to the folks listening, the key is if you've got a sitting legislator who's found guilty or pleads guilty, and the idea is that this no contest, he pled no contest, even though he pled it under a different law. Obviously they contend that he actually isn't guilty yet. So there is some gray area there. But basically, if it's a public trust crime where you're a legislator, and in this case, it's alleged that he didn't pay taxes, then he has to be expelled is what the other side's making. So it is fascinating. I mean, obviously everybody wishes that they weren't in this situation or in this scenario. We're talking with State Representative Jack Ladyman. I'll give you the last word, sir, about your announcing for re-election.
Well, I'm looking forward to going back and working on some things. There's two hot issues right now. I probably don't have time to get into these, but one of them is vaping. Our committee has had 2 meetings. I missed the last one because I had another commitment.
Excuse me.
That's a big issue. It's going to get bigger, and I don't have time to go into it, but there's 2 sides to that issue. I'll just give you one statistic. There's been 9 people, I believe it is, hospitalized in the state of Arkansas due to vaping.
Yeah.
6 or 7 of those have been found to use THC or some other
not the
illegal
nicotine
drug that they put into the device. But the other side of the problem is there's been according to the superintendent of the Bentonville schools who came to our committee, there's been a 400% increase in high school students doing vaping in the last 18 months.
Yeah.
So that's another issue. So are we getting kids into smoking going through this device? So it's a big issue. You're going to hear a lot about that.
Oh, yeah, no doubt. And there's already been a proposed tax increase.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The second issue, of course, is violence in schools and in our stores and in our community. And I spoke to the West Side juniors and seniors a couple weeks ago, and that was one of the questions they asked me. It's a big issue. And we have to be careful about what we do here. We don't want knee-jerk reactions like Beto O'Rourke and come after our guns. That's not
right.
We're wasting energy by talking about that.
Yeah.
We do have to address this issue, and that's going to be a lot of debate in the coming months and years. My take on that is that it is a health issue. It's a mental health issue. And things like
violence in schools, or
the crisis center. People get in crisis. They get in situations where they're going to lash out. What we have to do is fix that problem. It's a mental problem. It's not a gun problem, a knife problem, a semi, a car,
you're right about that.
A pressure cooker. People use all of these tools to do that. So we don't attack the tool. We have to figure out what the problem is.
Yeah.
But that's going to be a debate. Ongoing, and we do need to do something.
Let me ask you this: do you think, though, that back on the vaping, do you think that the government passing a law is really going to keep kids from using this product in school? I mean, right now they raised the age from smoking to 18 to 21, and yet, I mean, there's still people that are going to be smoking.
Well, that's a debatable issue. I know that based on historical, the sin taxes do reduce the number of people using those. Whether it's tobacco or alcohol or whatever it is. So it probably would help in that situation. A tax, I don't like that means of doing it.
Yeah.
That would reduce the number of people vaping. I'm not sure what the answer is, Paul, but I think we need to work on it. I think we need more information.
Yeah. I just would say, people were using nicotine when I was in high school, when you were in high school. I mean, it's been something that people have been doing for a long time.
Paul, we know that nicotine and smoking is related to cancer. We know that it's unhealthy. We know that people get cancer. Maybe it's not a direct link, but most people think it's connected to smoking. I had a brother-in-law that died of lung cancer, smoked a lot.
Yeah.
And we know that happens. So we want to reduce that. But we don't want to take away people's freedom of choice. If they want to do that, that's their right.
Yeah.
and they should be able to do it.
State Representative Jack Ladyman, it's always a treat to have you on. I always appreciate the discussion, sir.
Thanks, Paul.
Yeah,
Appreciate
and
it.
congratulations on your announcement.
Thank you.
Folks, we got to take a break. We got to go right now, and we'll be back with your meme of the day here in just a moment.
Hi, folks. I'd like to tell you about Conduit for Commerce. Conduit for Commerce is an Arkansas-focused nonprofit organization which receives no government
the ratings
funding.
for this speech he was giving was probably higher than the Democratic debate. And I don't even know if it was on national TV or not. And then he had fun with the. He talked about how Trump's such a good name, good political name, and he started talking about Mayor Pete and trying to say his last name. That was pretty funny.
Yeah, we can't really say it here either. We struggle with it. Pete Butt Edge is the only way you can pronounce it.
Trump says you got it. It's edge. He said you have to. It's butt edge is how you say it.
It's pretty funny. I mean, it really will be a riot now. Elizabeth Warren seems to be surging, but Joe Biden just keeps hanging around and talking in circles. I mean, nobody knows what Joe Biden's talking about. So it'll be regardless. Anybody in that field at this point. Anybody in that field at this point would be very entertaining to watch the president debate and really just campaign. Now,
when you talk about the issues, I mean, Trump's great just with one-liners and things like that, but it's when you focus on the issues is where he's going to destroy them. Mm-hmm. Like they don't want to talk about the economy, the fact that the economy's doing well. They want to call the president a racist, but they don't want to talk about how unemployment for minorities is the lowest it's ever been, how unemployment for women is the lowest it's ever been, and how wages are up. They don't want to talk about any of that.
I know you and your Republican colleagues in the House want to get back in power. You guys want to take back the House from the Democrats. So these impeachment hearings, Jerry Nadler and his committee, I mean, it's kind of a dog and pony show because, I mean, a lot of these Democrats that beat Republicans last time in the midterms were from moderate districts, and I think a lot of those people believe that what the media was telling them about Donald Trump being a KGB agent. Now that the Mueller report's out and that's been debunked, there was no collusion. I just think, I mean, it'd be great for you guys if they did have an impeachment vote because I think it would show that the Democrats are being led by the squad, and it would help the Republicans take back the chamber. What are your thoughts on the Republicans taking back the House of Representatives in 2020?
I think there's a really good opportunity to do that. If you look at the midterm elections, there were 31 Republican seats that we lost that President Trump won that district in 2016. So with him back on the ballot.
That's funny right there.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is building a liberty machine. Find out more at conduitnews.com.
All right. Here's your meme of the day. In light of all that. Oh, we don't have it yet? What's going on? We're waiting on the email to come through? Okay, well, we have a really good meme of the day, and it has to do with vaping. And if we don't get to it in the next 2 minutes, then it'll be up. It's going to be up regardless up at conduitnews.com. I'm sorry, at Conduit News, at Conduit News on Twitter. I mean, it's always great to talk to Jack Ladyman. I really appreciate him being on. It's awesome. With regards to this vaping thing, though, I mean, he did say something on the vaping issue about we need to be careful to not have a knee-jerk reaction. He said that, and I would agree. Like, we need to not have a knee-jerk reaction. And I am always skeptical when the government uses syntaxes to try to discourage behavior because with tobacco, historically, the evidence is there. I mean, the government needs people to smoke. They need people to smoke so that they get the revenue. Yet, well, we don't want people to smoke, and that's why we tax it. But the fact is, the government needs people to smoke, and they also want people to vape. I mean, if it means more money, that's what they want. We have time for it. We've got like 10 seconds. Here's your meme of the day, if we can get it in time. It's pretty funny. There it is. We'll post it up Conduit News' Twitter.
Broadcasting from the